Hello, and welcome to today's special webinar event on 3 critical skills for every accidental MariaDB and MySQL DBA. Today's webinar is sponsored by Pure Storage and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, there are a few things you should know about this webinar. First off, we want this to be a very educational event for you, so we encourage any and all questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. First, we have a link for getting started with Pure Storage. And there are also links to the Gorilla Guide Book Club, where you can get access to Actual Tech Media's great printed resources on technology topics, as well as the ATM Events Center, where you can find more fantastic events like this one. So I encourage you to download those handouts now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky attendee on the live event. So if you're watching this webinar on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. Now, if you are the winner, you can choose to donate the value of that gift card to one of our selected charities. Thanks to generous prize winners on previous Actual Tech Media events, thousands of dollars have been donated to charity, so thank you in advance if you make that choice today. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found at actualtechmedia.com. Scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. And finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. So to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. At the end of the event, we'll look at all the questions, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. So I'm excited to bring on our expert presenters, Nahal Marashi, who is Principal Product Marketing Manager at Pure Storage, and Andrew Silifant, who is Solutions Architect at Pure Storage. And now let's turn things over to Nahal.
Thanks, Scott. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar. We know you wear many hats at your company. One of the hats that you wear is that of MariaDB or MySQL DBA. And so in the next 30 minutes or so, Andrew and I will like to walk you through some tips and strategies that will help you optimize your database operations. So let me start off by introducing Pure Storage in case you haven't heard of us before. We are a fast-growing technology company. We did about $1.6 billion last year. We have over 9,000 global customers. Approximately 50% of the Fortune 500 companies are our customers. We have been a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for storage for not just once, but 8 years in a row. And if you look at the Magic Quadrant, we're actually far and outright in the leadership quadrant. And what we are most proud of is our Net Promoter Score. So if you're not familiar with the Net Promoter Score, it's industry standard. It's a survey sent out by Satmetrics to Pure customers, asking them, would they recommend Pure to their colleagues? Would they recommend them to their friends or literally anyone? It's a scaling system that starts from -100 to 100. And we have a score of 83.5, which is really very high. It's actually in the top 1% of business-to-business companies. And so that kind of gives you a gauge of how high our customers rate us. So Andrew, I know you've been talking to a lot of customers about their MySQL and MariaDB environments. Why don't you share with us some of the challenges that they've been facing and what you've learned so far from them?
I can do that for you, Nihal. Most of the conversations I have break up the challenges into 3 distinct areas. The first area looks at managing databases that have grown over time, that initially were designed to do one thing. And as they grew, the data structures inside changed, and that was fine. But the physical footprint also, as it grew, was built then in an unoptimized environment. So that brings a whole bunch of problems that are operational. It makes it really, really difficult to innovate in those environments. And it also makes performance bottlenecks and identifying those performance bottlenecks very likely, but also very difficult to find. The second challenge that I'll talk about is typically in web services environments, you will scale your database by having multiple clones of it and then redirecting reads and writes to various ones to ensure that your load is distributed evenly. And in these environments, which sometimes is called group replication with MySQL, Galera cluster with MariaDB, or just a generic primary replication environment, you need to establish a second or third system that is synced to the first. The problem with this is that synchronization takes time. So what this means is, if I have a problem today, there is a lead time that I need to wait for to solve that problem, which then results in the performance of the environment remaining suboptimal, and that then impacts further business outcomes such as my competitive edge over my competitors. And then the final one is we live in a cloud world where the cloud is an ever-present scenario. And your problem with that is you sacrifice a little bit of data mobility in those environments. The ability to build something on Amazon AWS, for example, would then have different APIs to Microsoft Azure. And these three problems make it incredibly difficult to then adopt a digital transformation strategy that then helps everybody get through the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, that's very interesting insights, Andrew, on some of the challenges. You talked about the data gravity, you talked about the management inefficiencies at scale, you touched upon the lack of data mobility. So why are we talking about this now? Certainly, the data complexity is coming with the backdrop of the digital transformation initiatives that a lot of companies are undergoing, right? And so companies need to manage and comprehend all of this data that is growing in their companies. And if they don't do it right, that's going to translate to lost business opportunities. It's not enough to just run daily operations to remain competitive. It's also actually looking at the data to be able to drive actionable insights and actionable information. So on a personal level, as a DBA, what are the most critical skills that you need to adopt? None of these skills will come as a total surprise. It's just that in this new environment, these skills have become even more important. The first one is around performance tuning and optimizing the database operations, especially eliminating any kind of bottlenecks to delivering a superior application performance. No one likes a slow performing application, and when it turns out to be caused by a bottleneck by the database, that becomes an issue, especially if you can't fix it in time. That's going to result in loss of revenue. It's going to result in loss of eyeballs and customer dissatisfaction. So essentially, this skill has become very critical for MariaDB and MySQL environments, being able to proactively monitor the environment and being able to make changes to data structures. The second skill is around capacity planning and being able to plan for future growth and being able to accurately plan, right? So not under provisioning or over provisioning, especially in the context of this explosive data growth. Being able to support more users and connections is become very, very critical. And last but not the least is being able to implement robust backup and recovery procedures. In the last decade or so, backup vendors have helped with optimizing backup, being able to back up fast, but rapid restore in the event of a disaster or in the event of a ransomware attack, all of has become very critical, especially with meeting the RPO and RTO objectives is critical, as well as meeting customer service level agreements, right? Because if you don't meet those customer service level agreements, Obviously, there's customer dissatisfaction, there's customer churn, and of course, all the penalties that come with that. So I think these are really critical skills, and they become very important in the new age. Pure does have an approach that can empower database administrators like yourself, and we're very familiar with these challenges. So, Andrew, why don't you share with us some of the approaches that Pure is taking, and maybe you can start off by giving us a brief overview of the Flasharray family.
Sure. So all of the problems that Nihal was just talking about, whether it be performance, backup and recovery, etc., they're built on Pure's core philosophy of we want to make things as easy to use. We want to make it evergreen. So essentially it lasts for as long as we need it to, with various different things we can do to ensure you get upgraded and all those nice things. But at the core of it is we have our hardware, which is Flasharray, powered by Purity for Flasharray. Now, in the Flasharray product scenario, it is a primary storage block and file storage platform. But in the scenarios we're going to talk about today, we are going to focus primarily on the functionality of the block storage profile, which also includes things like snapshots, etc. But the really nice thing about Flasharray is we can actually carve it into different verticals for different use cases. For example, Flasharray X is great for core data center operations, which require high performance and low latency. Flasharray C is fantastic for high capacity scenarios that don't require as much performance, between 2 and 5 milliseconds. Edge computing, X also fits into that beautifully, more specifically our lower end X models like the X10, X20. And then the really, really even more fantastic thing is you can combine multiple X and C models to give business continuity and disaster recovery using things like active cluster and asynchronous replication. And then finally, we actually have Purity deployed in a cloud environment, which we call Cloud Block Store. What this means is you can have the exact same data services that you have in your core data center, edge, business continuity environments as you do in the cloud, which then allows you to adopt a more hybridized approach. Let's move on to the MySQL and MariaDB side of the story. So if we focus on a very specific challenge with MySQL and MariaDB, and that is seeding new replicas. Adding new replicas takes time, as I explained earlier. If I wanted to seed 5 terabytes of data to a new replica, and I only had a 10 gigabit Ethernet link, this will take 69 minutes. In those 69 minutes, I could either overload my existing systems or not be able to service new customers, which is going to stifle my company's growth. Also, for every single replica that you want to provision, you need to ensure that you've got the storage to be able to provision it. So if I had a 1 terabyte node that needs to be provisioned to 4 new systems, that means I need 4 terabytes of storage somewhere, somehow, to be able to do this. And it's also incredibly inefficient because this is going to take up duplicates amounts of storage that I don't necessarily need to pay for in total with deduplication technologies, which we're going to get onto in a moment. So Flasharray, from the Flasharray's perspective, we can solve these really, really complex problems in a very simple way. On Flasharray, we have the ability to take volume snapshots. That is a fantastic technology because Flasharray is always on deduplication and we are always thin provisioned. What this means is if I need to take a storage snapshot, I'm not creating any new data. I'm just pointing to an existing volume. As that volume changes, I'm still pointing to the state the volume was in. So let's make the assumption that I want to create a new snapshot of a Galera cluster node and then export it to a different node and have that node come up almost immediately with the data it needs to, therefore eliminating the need to seed or perform an SST in Galera clusters terminology. This will be near immediate. And the really, really nice thing is that's just a bunch of clicks. You bring up the node or the replica in a group replication scenario, and it'll immediately take a look at what data has changed since I had all of my data in the snapshots, and it'll apply the changed data. That means I don't have to wait that whole 5 hours or that whole 69 minutes or that whole 10 minutes even just to get everything up and going. It's really, really quick, really, really efficient. And the really nice thing is, as long as it stays inside the same Flasharray, I am then deduplicating all of my replicas against my source data, which is eliminating the need to use more storage. So what this potentially means at a very high level is, let's make the assumption that I still have that 1 terabyte database that I want to expand to 3 more replicas. Well, what this means is my logical storage usage is 4 terabytes. On Flasharray, that just means it's a number. But the physical capacity used on the actual storage is only 1 terabyte because you're deduplicating each replica against one another. This is fantastic for a cost-saving thing. It's fantastic for performance scenarios that we'll chat about in a little bit, but it makes things a hell of a lot faster to get them up and running. So as I was just busy chatting about that deduplication, it actually goes a little bit further than just reducing to 1 terabyte. The really, really nice thing is our deduplication engine inside Flasharray, if I only have a single MySQL instance, I can get a 2-to-1 deduplication ratio or 4-to-1 for some InnoDB tables on just that database. What this means is, let's make the assumption I'm getting 2-to-1 of my 1 terabyte database. So that in total is about 500 gigabytes. This means I'm not consuming 1 terabyte for 4 replicas. If that one replica is then only consuming 500 gigabytes, well, in total, then my 4, 8, 16 replicas on the same Flasharray are all just consuming 512 gigabytes of used data. This is fantastic because then it makes your calculations for your business expansion as, well, each of my nodes needs to achieve X amount of performance. If I'm putting 16 nodes onto a single Flasharray and it's achieving that minimum performance per node, well, then you don't need to buy more storage. All of your considerations then become a purely performance-focused scenario. And once again, additional nodes and replicas consume no physical storage space. I can't emphasize that enough. So let's also then talk about how putting all of those nodes onto a single Flasharray, or all nodes that have a specific use case, can be accelerated a little bit further without buying more storage. We in Pure Storage have a technology called direct memory cache. These are Intel Optane-based disks that we insert into the arrays, and the array is very clever and it uses it as a read cache. So all of my data that gets frequent reads is going to be accelerated. What this means is, if I read over data once, it's not going to be accelerated. If I'm continuously reading over that data, the response time for subsequent reads over that data is going to be a lot lower. So this means I already have a saturated array, and I'm putting all of my read-heavy MySQL or MariaDB instances on it. Okay, instead of buying a new array, our sales folks would just say, well, put some direct memory cache in it if you're a good candidate. Well, then we can accelerate the response time for those nodes by between 5 and 15%. This means that, once again, Pure Storage is trying to get the cost as low as possible, trying to get the physical footprint in your data center as low as possible, and then focusing on, are you getting the appropriate performance for your business operations? Let's talk a little bit about the backup use case. So inside Pure Storage, we also have another product called FlashBlade, and Flasharray has snapshot capabilities. So if I have certain business requirements that say, okay, I need to do a backup once a week. Okay, if I've got many, many MySQL instances that need to be backed up in this way, then we can very, very quickly do that with FlashBlade, because FlashBlade is scalable from both a linear perspective and a capacity perspective, a linear performance perspective. So what this means, if I have one MySQL instance backing up to FlashBlade, it'll go pretty fast. If I'm doing one restore from FlashBlade, it'll go pretty fast, because FlashBlade is a unified file and object platform that scales by adding physical blades with compute and capacity inside the blade. So if I have a minimal 7-blade system and I'm backing up 7 instances to it separately, well, it'll go X fast. Well, if I have 8 or 9 instances, we add 2 more blades and it'll go 2 blades faster. What this means is that we can then focus more on getting your business up and running more quickly in the event of a disaster for recovery, because recovery is the most important part of all of this. We can then say, well, if you need to be recovering 8 distinct instances as fast as is humanly possible, our sales folks will try and configure the FlashBlade to be able to give you that saturated high performance restore capability from either file or object using Maria backup or MySQL backup. The other side of this is you can offload your snapshots from Flasharray to FlashBlade or to other places. Taking a snapshot, if it's still on the same Flasharray as it was taken, the restore is very, very quick because all it's doing is replacing the pointers with this is my actual data. If my snapshot is moved off to AWS or a NAS share or somewhere else, well, it's a deduplicated container of itself. So that means it's not pulling back 1 terabyte of data if it's a terabyte database. It's pulling back the deduplicated data of that, which is fantastic. So we've started to deal with the management complexities with Flasharray and how it's very easy to use. And if you combine Flasharray and FlashBlade with pure one management view, you can then view a fleet of storage arrays from a single interface. We've then also dealt with optimizing your business operations with MySQL and MariaDB, for example, with Galera cluster and group replication using storage snapshots. And then finally, we've also talked about the backup and recovery use cases. So we're trying to intersect with each of these critical skills that people are going to need to run these databases. And our products hopefully make it a lot easier and a lot less skills need to be learned because those products are so simple. So let me recap a little bit. With Pure Storage offers a number of solutions for MySQL and MariaDB. First, we offer consistent performance. What this means is if I buy a Flasharray today and next year it's not fast enough, without completely lifting your entire environment and disrupting it, we can non-disruptively upgrade your existing Flasharray with a faster one. Or if a newer generation comes out with evergreen storage, we provide newer controllers every so often, you're going to be able to say you get consistent performance over time for your use case. The second Pure Storage solution that I'll talk about is seeding new replicas from storage snapshots. This increases productivity and reduces time to availability for those big replication environments, making it a hell of a lot faster and more efficient for me to run my business. We also offer flexible hybrid cloud deployment models. For example, with Cloud Block Store and Flasharray, we're able to shift between the two environments very seamlessly because they're a common data format, and they also share the exact same data services and rich APIs for programmatic interfacing. Pure Storage also tries to reduce your data footprint as much as possible. And once again, I want to emphasize that additional replicas will consume no space because they're deduplicating amongst one another. As I discussed during the consistent performance section of this slide, there's no service disruption for database storage, where if we're doing software upgrades, if we're doing hardware upgrades, or if you want to extend your business's general storage availability, we have synchronous replication capabilities with Active Cluster to be able to do that. And then finally, we have consistent container management with Portworx, which helps improve performance, eliminate bottlenecks, and make it very, very easy to run your databases in cloud, on-prem, or in multiple different places. All right, so coming to the end of this, if you want to optimize your database operations or you want to try some of these solutions that Pure Storage has, go and take a look at purestorage.com/open source, where we have a one-stop portal with MySQL and MariaDB solutions and a lot of other content for other databases in that segment. We also have the ability to provide test drive capabilities where remotely customers or potential prospects can look at how our databases will function or how our storage will function with your databases. And you can get a feel for how easy it is to do various things with our products. Finally, I encourage everybody to try PX Backup if you have a containerized environment. It's a really, really easy way to protect your Kubernetes applications, and we offer a 30-day free trial with it.
Great insights, Andrew. I think these tips will certainly help our MySQL and MariaDB DBAs to optimize their database operations. So I've been kind of monitoring the chat. I see a number of questions that have come in. So why don't we take the next few minutes and address some of these questions. So the first question is around the digital transformation initiative that this attendee is talking about. So he says that my company has recently started a digital transformation initiative, which has led them to assess their data infrastructure needs. They're currently using direct attached storage. I think this is something that we hear from a lot of our customers. They have DAS environments for their MySQL and MariaDB. And so the question is, why should we use enterprise shared storage instead of what I'm using now, which in this case is DAS?
Yeah. So DAS is always an interesting place to start with building these environments out. Because let's say I'm a small business, I want to ensure my costs are really, really low. Putting a DAS into a system, easy peasy, done, don't need to worry about it. As things grow and become more complex, that becomes a more difficult operation to manage over time. So if you think about DAS, every single system you're running is going to have its own storage. How am I, as an administrator, going to then know, well, is there a problem? Where are the performance bottlenecks? Where's my single line of reporting? How am I going to account for potential failures? Enterprise storage like Flasharray allows us to centralize all of that into a single location and say, well, this is the performance you're getting. These are the potential failures. Here's how we're going to identify potential problems in the environment. So as opposed to having a sprawl of things, we put it all in one place, consolidate it, and then say, there's only one thing you need to worry about and look at, as opposed to 6 or 7 things to worry about and look at.
Good info, Andrew. The second question is kind of a follow-up to that. Under-provisioning and over-provisioning is a very common issue with DAS. So the question is around what kind of tools does Pure offer that avoids this kind of situation?
There are a number of tools and capabilities that help avoid the situation that Pure offers. The first one I've already discussed, which is Flasharray is always thin provisioned and always deduped. FlashBlade is always compressed and thin provisioned, or you don't provision any storage until you use it. So our way of optimizing these over-provisioned and under-provisioned environments is, first and foremost, any storage you create is not actually consuming storage until it is used for the use case. So a 1 terabyte database is only going to use 1 terabyte of storage before dedupe. But if I've created a database that is intended for a terabyte of space, but I haven't done anything to it, it's consuming nothing. Then you have the ability to look in Pure One and say, okay, instead of over-provisioning an environment for something that might happen, let's look at the trend of how I've been using my arrays from a performance and a capacity perspective and see at what point I will actually need more storage. Many customers could potentially find that instead of having 125% over-provisioning, they could go for 90% over-provisioning for 6 months. Not 90% over-provisioning, provisioning at 90% for 6 months. And then saying at the 6-month mark, let's expand from there. Making it a lot more seamless and more predictable environment to go and create databases in.
Thanks, Andrew. The next question that has come in is more around competitive differentiation. So there are other storage vendors that can also create storage snapshots and do the data mobility approaches that we talked about. So the question is around what is unique about Pure in terms of the MySQL and MariaDB environment.
So the fantastic thing about snapshots on Flasharray is the deduplication engine. Remember, if I create a snapshot, I'm not using any more storage until I change the various things. But let's make the assumption I'm not changing anything. I'm not using any storage when I create that snapshot. Then what happens is I create a clone of that snapshot. I go and do something else. As opposed to provisioning more storage for that clone, what's beautiful about Flasharray is that it's just pointing to existing data that hasn't changed. So it's deduplicating everything inside the box against itself using a single namespace. And that's what truly differentiates us in Pure Storage. Another thing, if we look at the performance angle of it, is with direct memory cache. If I'm cloning out a lot of read-focused nodes, and I have one node that has accelerated data in it. If I clone out that node to another node, I don't need to go and further accelerate that node. It's already accelerated because, well, because of the nature of the dedupe engine inside the box, because it's pointing to data that is already accelerated. So there are a number of fantastic things that deduplication enables, and one of them is how efficient and capable it makes our snapshotting system.
Thanks, Andrew. The next question is around containers. I know in your slides you touched upon container management. So my company is undergoing an initiative to move databases into containers, and so the question is, how can Pure help in this area?
The biggest problem, I'd say, that looking at containers from a very high level is it could be in many, many different places. We understand containers from a generic, this is what they are. Your problem is containers implemented in AWS using S3 storage could be different to a container implemented in Azure, implemented using blob storage. So where Pure comes into this is with Portworx, of we provide a single data layer that is consistent across multiple places, one of them being VMware Tanzu, another one just being general VMware, bare metal systems, there's capabilities to talk to Flasharray and FlashBlade, working in AWS and Azure. It's all definitely the same because Portworx goes and abstracts the storage layer away from everybody and says, we just go and create our own file system, and then you can do many things in multiple places. That's the main way in which we can help. And then diving into Portworx's different capabilities, we can offer different functionality to each database. Specifically also looking at PX backup, we can go and do application consistent backups using that of applications deployed in containers.
Great stuff, Andrew. I'm looking through the chat. I don't see any more questions, so I think we're in good shape. Just wanted to thank everyone for joining us for this webinar. Hope the information we provided was helpful, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you even beyond this webinar. And we look forward to engaging with you on your MySQL and MariaDB opportunities. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Scott.
Great. Thanks, Nahal and Andrew. Excellent presentation and Q&A. And just a quick reminder to everybody to check out the Get Started with Pure Storage handout there in your handout section, or the link to the URL there. And before we wrap up, we do have one more piece of business. It's the prize drawing for the $300 Amazon gift card. And the winner of the gift card is Larry Horvat from Ohio. So congratulations to Larry. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Pure Storage for making this event possible. And of course, I want to thank all of you for attending and for your questions. So that concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.